My daughter stole 2 suitcases and vanished overnight. After finding a tiny bag of drugs in her nightstand, I confronted her and she whispered, "I can't come back or he'll hurt me." I stood in the hallway, frozen. That was 4 years ago. Yesterday, I saw her face on an LA News report about intimacy workers and my world shattered again. Parents, how did you watch your kid's life go down the drain? My youngest daughter, Lynn, was always a beaming light. She was always the happiest girl. She never complained about anything, unlike her older brother Joshua. It was around her freshman year of high school when I started to notice a slight change in her behavior. She started to wear more makeup and fewer clothes. When confronted about it, she would always get very angry with me, shouting about how it's her body and she can do what she wants. Another grand excuse was, "But everyone else is doing it, Mom." This was really hard for me to watch because I was seeing my precious sweet little daughter trying to turn into what she thought was a real woman. I always tried to explain to her that makeup and wearing fewer clothes doesn't have to mean doing what everyone else is doing, and that she should take pride in what she wants to be. Regardless, she wouldn't budge, and I'm a big believer in more relaxed parenting, so at the time, I thought maybe it would just be a phase, but our relationship slowly got worse and worse. Debates became arguments, and arguments became fights. She started bringing guys over, and while I didn't get a good look at all of them, I saw some who looked twice her age. Then one day I snapped. I was going through her room while she was at school to try and find something I knew she had taken. While searching the nightstand, I found a tiny white baggie tucked behind the lamp. I had my fair share of college days, so I knew exactly what that little baggie entailed. I had a huge confrontation with her when she got home from school. She eventually started to yell at me, and I returned the favor. It got so bad that the next morning, when I checked on her to see if she had left for school, she had vanished. 2 suitcases from my closet had gone missing. I called the police immediately. How could my sweet Lynn do this? Run away from me, the person who loves her most in the whole world. I searched the whole neighborhood, driving for hours around our small town. We found nothing, and neither did the police. After around 4 years of no contact, one of my daughter's friends' moms shared a concerning post with me on Instagram. It looked like a video of my daughter in a news report. At first, I didn't understand why she would be on the news, but then I saw the headline, "Intimacy Workers Uproar in the South Side of Town." I couldn't believe it. There was no way my daughter had really gone down that rough path. The more I examined her in the clip, the more she looked drugged out of her mind. Tears started instantly flowing from my eyes. Here I was, sitting in my bedroom, watching my daughter's life spiral out of control, and there was nothing I could do about it. The video was from Los Angeles, California, and I lived in a small town in Texas. After a few days of living with this news, I decided that it was only right to go and look for my daughter. I booked the next available flight to Los Angeles and made my way there in less than a couple of days. The next few weeks consisted of me getting in my rental car and searching all over the south side of town, just like the news report had said. I would pick a street, drive all the way down until it seemed to end, go over a block, and repeat. I knew the chances of me seeing her were slim, but I had no other choice at that point. I knew the police were really no help, so I didn't bother contacting them. One day, a miracle happened. I was driving down a desolate, run-down neighborhood when I saw what looked like my daughter's distinct features. I got closer, rolled down my window, and shouted her name. "Lynn!" She turned around instantly, and there she was, my beautiful baby girl. I got out of my car and ran to her. To my surprise, she started running toward me. "Mom! Mom!" she cried. We hugged each other like we never had before, tears rolling down each of our faces. It was truly a moment I'll never forget. She got into my car, and after about 10 minutes of hugging and crying, I took her to get food and sit down to talk. She still looked drugged out, and I could tell she was hurting. When we were eating, I thought we would have a good conversation, catching up on things. Instead, she sat there with a dull look on her face the whole time, not really showing any emotion. I didn't know if this was the substances talking, but it really spooked me. I got her to talk a little near the end of dinner, but after we finished, I got into my car expecting her to follow. She didn't. She just stood there, staring at me. I asked her what she was doing. Didn't she want to come back with me and have a fresh start? She came closer and told me something that will haunt me for ages. I can't come, or they will find me and hurt me. That's where I drew the line. I knew I had to get the police involved. I insisted on her coming with me, but she said they were watching and had already warned her without me noticing while we were eating. I told her to stay where she was and not to move as I called the police. While the phone was ringing, I noticed that she seemed to be looking off in the distance. She looked at something, then quickly turned back to me. She hugged me one last time and said, "I'm sorry, but I love you, Mom." Then she ran. She ran faster than I ever could. After that moment, I felt like I was drowning in my own sorrow. I now knew my daughter was in trouble, and I couldn't even protect her when she was right there in my possession. I felt like a failure as a mother, a failure as a protector, and a failure as a human. Seeing my own daughter's life spiral out of control has made me fall into my own pit of, I couldn't go back to Texas, not without Lynn. The thought of returning to our home, explaining to Joshua and our extended family that I'd found Lynn only to lose her again, was unbearable. I checked into a cheap motel near where I'd found her and began a new routine. The room was small and dingy, with water stains on the ceiling and a television that only got 3 channels clearly, but it became my base of operations, my command center in the search for my daughter. Every day I'd drive through the same neighborhoods, showing her picture to anyone who would look. Most people turned away, but occasionally someone would nod in recognition. "Yeah, that's one of Victor's girls," a woman selling flowers on a corner told me, her eyes wary. "You her mama? Better be careful. Victor doesn't like people messing with his business. The warning sent a shiver through me, but I couldn't stop. I'd come too far, seen too much to turn back now. It took 3 weeks of searching before I met Amber, a young woman with tired eyes who recognized Lynn immediately. I found her sitting on a bus bench, her posture suggesting she wasn't waiting for transportation, but rather taking a moment's rest. When I showed her Lynn's photo, her expression changed from indifference to recognition. She goes by Stardust now, Amber said, glancing nervously over her shoulder. Victor renamed all his girls, gives them new identities, makes them forget who they were before. The thought of my daughter answering to a name that wasn't her own, a name chosen by the man who controlled her, made me physically ill. We talked in a laundromat, the rhythmic tumbling of clothes masking our conversation. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows that emphasized the hollows under Amber's eyes and the track marks on her arms that she didn't bother to hide. Amber had escaped Victor's control 6 months earlier and was still looking over her shoulder. He's got a temper, she explained, absent-mindedly touching a scar on her collarbone. And connections. Police, judges, businessmen, they're all clients or partners. Her matter-of-fact tone made the information all the more chilling, suggesting a network of corruption and exploitation far more extensive than I had imagined. I begged her to help me find Lynn. Amber hesitated, then scribbled an address on a receipt. There's a shelter for girls like us. Ask for Desiree. Tell her Amber sent you. She might know where Lynn is, or at least how to reach her. She pressed the crumpled paper into my hand, her fingers lingering for a moment as if transferring not just information but responsibility. Be careful, she added, gathering her laundry basket. Victor has eyes everywhere. The shelter was in a converted warehouse, its exterior deliberately nondescript. A simple sign reading, Women's Resource Center, hung beside a heavy metal door with a security camera mounted above it. I pressed the intercom button, heart pounding as I waited for a response. Desiree turned out to be a former social worker with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She led me through a common area where women of various ages sat talking, reading, or simply staring into space, their expressions ranging from hopeful to defeated. I know Lynn, she confirmed after I explained who I was. She's come here a few times when things got bad, but she always goes back. The substances have a strong hold on her, and so does Victor. Desiree's office was small but organized, with filing cabinets lining one wall and a desk covered in paperwork. Photos of women, smiling, healthy, clearly recovered, decorated a bulletin board behind her chair, silent testimonials to the possibility of change. Desiree agreed to get a message to Lynn, but warned me not to get my hopes up. Girls in her situation, they're afraid to hope for anything better. Victor convinces them they're worthless, that no one else would want them. She explained the psychological tactics pimps use: isolation, degradation, intermittent rewards, threats, painting a picture of manipulation so comprehensive it made my head spin. It's not just the physical control, she said, her voice softening slightly. It's the way they get inside these girls' heads. 2 days later, my phone rang at 3 a.m. I lunged for it, nearly knocking it off the nightstand in my haste. Mom? Lynn's voice was small, tentative. Are you really here in LA? The sound of her voice, so familiar yet changed, brought tears to my eyes. We arranged to meet at a 24-hour diner far from Victor's territory. I arrived an hour early, scanning every face, jumping at every sound. The waitress, noticing my anxiety, kept my coffee cup filled and asked no questions. When Lynn finally walked in, my heart broke all over again. She was thinner than before, with dark circles under her eyes and a nervous twitch in her hands. But she was there. She slid into the booth across from me, her movements cautious as if she might flee at any moment. We sat in a corner booth, both of us too emotional to eat the pancakes I'd ordered. The syrup congealed as we talked, the food growing cold between us. I want to help you, I said, reaching for her hand across the table. Please, Lynn. Let me take you home. Her fingers were ice cold in mine, her nails bitten to the quick. She pulled her hand away, glancing anxiously toward the door. You don't understand. Victor owns me now. The things I've done, the substances I've taken. I'm not that girl from Texas anymore. Her voice cracked on the word Texas, as if the very thought of home was painful. I leaned forward, my voice fierce with maternal determination. You will always be my daughter. Nothing you've done changes that. We can get you help, protection. I outlined a plan: rehab, therapy, a fresh start in a new place where Victor couldn't find her. For a moment, hope flickered in her eyes. Then the bell above the diner door jingled, and Lynn's face drained of color. A tall man with a shaved head and cold eyes had entered, scanning the restaurant until his gaze landed on our table. He wore an expensive leather jacket despite the warm night, his fingers adorned with heavy gold rings that caught the light as he moved. That's Marcus, Lynn whispered, shrinking in her seat. He works for Victor. Handles the girls who try to leave. The word handles hung between us, loaded with implied violence. I reached for my phone, but Lynn grabbed my wrist. Don't. He'll hurt you. Just let me handle this. Before I could stop her, she slid out of the booth and approached Marcus, her body language completely transformed. Shoulders hunched, eyes downcast, submissive. The confident girl who had once captained her middle school debate team now moved like a struck animal, expecting punishment. They spoke briefly, his hand gripping her arm with obvious force. I could see his fingers digging into her skin, leaving white marks that would surely bruise. Then Lynn returned to our table, her movements jerky with fear. I have to go, she said, not meeting my eyes. Victor knows I'm here. If I don't go back now, he'll... She swallowed hard, unable to finish the sentence. Just go home, Mom. Please. Forget about me. The defeat in her voice was almost as painful as the words themselves. I stood up, desperate. I'm not leaving without you. We'll go to the police, get protection. Lynn cut me off with a bitter laugh. The police? Victor has cops on his payroll. Why do you think they never found me? Why do you think they can't shut down his operation? She glanced nervously at Marcus, who was watching us from near the door, his posture relaxed but his eyes alert and predatory. I have to go. He's getting impatient. I couldn't let her leave. Not again. In desperation, I blurted out, I'll pay. Whatever Victor wants for you, I'll pay it. The words came out before I could think them through, fueled by a primal need to protect my child at any cost. Lynn's eyes widened in shock, then softened with a sadness that seemed to age her beyond her years. Oh, Mom, that's not how this works. I'm not for sale because he never really bought me. He trapped me. The simple truth of her statement hit me like a physical blow. She hugged me quickly, whispering in my ear, There's a woman named Desiree at a shelter on Wilcox. If I can get away, that's where I'll go. Wait 3 days, then check there. Her breath was warm against my cheek, her words rushed and urgent. Then she was gone, walking out with Marcus, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I wanted to run after her, to scream, to fight, but I knew that would only put her in more danger. Instead, I did as she asked. For 3 agonizing days, I waited, jumping every time my phone rang, barely sleeping. On the 4th day, I returned to the shelter, my heart in my throat. Desiree met me at the door, her expression giving nothing away. She's here, she said simply, leading me to a small room in the back. And there was Lynn, curled up on a narrow bed, shivering despite the blankets piled on top of her. Her face was bruised, one eye swollen nearly shut, but she was alive. Withdrawal, Desiree explained quietly. She showed up last night, pretty struck up. Said she managed to slip away when Victor was distracted with a new girl. The thought of another young woman taking Lynn's place in that nightmare made me sick, but I pushed the feeling aside to focus on my daughter. I rushed to Lynn's side, gathering her trembling body in my arms. She felt so fragile, like a bird with hollow bones. Mom, she murmured, her voice hoarse. You stayed. The simple statement held volumes. Surprise, relief, gratitude. Of course I stayed, I whispered, stroking her tangled hair. I'll always stay. I meant it with every fiber of my being, a promise not just for that moment, but for all the difficult moments to come. Over the next few days, I rarely left Lynn's side as she fought through the worst of the withdrawal. The shelter had a volunteer doctor who monitored her condition, but resources were limited. Lynn alternated between chills and sweats, her body purging the toxins that had held her captive as surely as Victor had. She cried out in her sleep, sometimes begging unseen tormentors for mercy, other times apologizing for failures I couldn't imagine. I held her through it all, wiping her forehead with cool cloths, helping her sip water when she could keep it down, whispering reassurances when nightmares gripped her. Victor will be looking for her, Desiree warned me on the 3rd day. This place is safe, but not forever. You need to think about your next steps. We sat in the shelter's small kitchen, sharing coffee while Lynn slept under the watchful eye of a volunteer. He doesn't let his investments go easily, especially not ones as profitable as Lynn. The clinical way she described the situation made my skin crawl, but I understood she was simply being realistic. I knew she was right. As Lynn grew stronger, the reality of our situation became clearer. We couldn't go back to Texas. Victor had connections across state lines, and our small town offered no anonymity. We couldn't stay in Los Angeles, where his network was strongest. We needed to disappear. The life we had known, the home we had shared, the community that had watched Lynn grow up, all of it would have to be left behind. It was a devastating realization, but necessary for survival. Through Desiree, I connected with a network that helped trafficking survivors relocate. They arranged new identities for us, driver's licenses, social security cards, credit histories, and found us a small apartment in Portland, Oregon. The process took weeks, during which Lynn slowly regained her strength and began to participate in the shelter's recovery programs. She attended group therapy sessions, her voice growing stronger as she shared her experiences and listened to others. I watched with pride as glimpses of her old self began to emerge. Her quick wit, her compassion, her resilience. It's not foolproof, the facilitator, a former FBI agent named Rachel, warned us as she handed over our new documentation. But it's a start. Keep a low profile, avoid social media, change your appearance. Most importantly, don't contact anyone from your past lives. The stack of papers and cards she gave us represented not just new identities but a complete severance from everything and everyone we had ever known. I thought of Joshua, who would never know what happened to his sister and mother, and felt a grief so profound it was physical. The night before we were set to leave, Lynn had a panic attack. What if he finds us? She gasped between sobs, her whole body shaking. What if this is all for nothing? I held her until the storm passed, making promises I wasn't sure I could keep. We'll be okay, I whispered into her hair. We'll be together. That's what matters. As I rocked her, I realized that despite everything, I believed those words. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Our new life in Portland was a delicate balance of caution and healing. Lynn dyed her honey blonde hair dark brown and cut it short. I lightened mine and wore glasses I didn't need. We used our new names, Catherine and Emma Reynolds, exclusively, even in private. The apartment was small but clean, with large windows that let in the Pacific Northwest light. We bought secondhand furniture and thrift store clothes, building a life from scratch with limited resources but unlimited determination. Lynn, now Emma, began therapy with a specialist in trauma and addiction. Some days were better than others. She'd wake up screaming from nightmares, or I'd find her curled in the bathtub, shaking with cravings. But slowly, incrementally, she began to heal. The hollow-eyed girl from Los Angeles gave way to a young woman who could smile again, who could make plans for a future she now believed she might have. 6 months after our arrival, she enrolled in community college courses. A year in, she started volunteering at a women's shelter. "It helps," she told me one evening as we walked home from the bus stop, rain misting around us. "Helping others makes me feel like maybe there's a purpose to everything I went through." The wisdom in her words struck me. This daughter of mine had endured horrors I could barely comprehend. Yet here she was, transforming her pain into purpose. For 2 years, we lived in careful anonymity. I worked as a bookkeeper for a local restaurant. Lynn completed her associate's degree and began applying to 4-year colleges. We made a few cautious friendships but kept mostly to ourselves. Our apartment became a sanctuary, filled with books, plants, and the simple comforts we had once taken for granted. We celebrated holidays quietly, creating new traditions to replace the ones we'd left behind. We were building something precious. A life after trauma, a future beyond fear. Then came the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, addressed to Catherine Reynolds, no return address. The sight of it in our mailbox sent a chill through me. No one should have known that name, that address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 5 words. "Victor knows where you are." The handwriting was neat and precise, the message all the more terrifying for its simplicity. The fragile security we'd built crumbled instantly. I called Lynn at school, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Come home now. Pack only what you can carry." We were on a bus to Seattle within hours, leaving behind everything we couldn't fit in our backpacks. From Seattle, we took a train to Chicago, then a series of buses to small towns in the Midwest, zigzagging our way east until we finally settled in a rural community in Vermont. We used cash only, worked under the table, and changed our names again, becoming Sarah and Jessica Mitchell. The constant movement was exhausting, the perpetual vigilance draining, but the alternative was unthinkable. The pattern repeated itself 18 months later. Another anonymous letter, another frantic escape, another new beginning. Each time, the warning came just as we were starting to feel secure. Each time, we left with less and traveled farther. After the 3rd letter, this one finding us in a coastal town in Maine, Lynn broke down. "This is never going to end, is it?" she sobbed, huddled in the bathroom of yet another motel room. "He's always going to find us. We're going to spend our whole lives running." The despair in her voice mirrored my own growing weariness. I had no comforting lies left to offer. The truth was, I was exhausted too. Exhausted from looking over my shoulder, from starting over, from watching my daughter jump at shadows. "Maybe," I said slowly, an idea forming, "that's exactly what he wants. To keep us running scared, never settling, never fighting back." Lynn looked up, her tear-stained face questioning. "What do you mean?" The bathroom light flickered overhead, casting strange shadows across her face. "I mean, what if the letters aren't from Victor at all? What if they're from someone who wants us to keep running?" It was a theory that had been growing in my mind. The timing of the letters was too perfect, always arriving just as we were establishing ourselves, just as Lynn was making progress. And why warn us? If Victor truly knew where we were, why not simply come for Lynn? The more I considered it, the more the pattern seemed deliberate, designed to keep us in a state of perpetual fear and instability. We decided to take a risk. Instead of running again, we stayed in Maine and began our own investigation. Through careful, anonymous inquiries, we learned that Victor's operation had been hit hard by a federal task force shortly after we left Los Angeles. He was serving 20 years in a federal prison. Marcus, his enforcer, had been unalived in a confrontation with police. The organization was in disarray, with former lieutenants fighting for control of diminished territory. The news should have been a relief, but it only deepened the mystery of the threatening letters. Then who's sending the letters? Lynn wondered as we processed this information. We sat at our small kitchen table, the letters spread out before us like pieces of a puzzle. The answer came from an unexpected source. Desiree, the shelter worker who had helped us in Los Angeles, had maintained a secure email account where I could contact her in emergencies. When I reached out about the letters, her response was immediate and shocking. "It's Amber," she wrote. "She's been tracking you through a private investigator. She blames Lynn for her sister's OD. Apparently her sister Jasmine started working for Victor after Lynn escaped, taking her place. Amber thinks if Lynn had stayed, her sister wouldn't have been recruited." The revelation hit us both hard. All this time we'd been running from a ghost, driven by fear of a threat that no longer existed. The real danger had come from an unexpected source. A grieving sister looking for someone to blame. "What do we do now?" Lynn asked, her voice small but steadier than it had been in years. I looked at my daughter, no longer the beaming child of her early years, nor the broken young woman I'd found in Los Angeles, but something new. A survivor. Scarred, but strong. "We stop running," I said simply. "We build a life here, a real one, and we help others do the same." The decision felt right, a turning point after years of reacting to fear. That was 3 years ago. Today, Lynn works as a peer counselor at a recovery center, using her experience to guide others through the darkness she once knew. I manage a small bookstore and lead a support group for families of trafficking survivors. We still have our difficult days. Lynn's recovery is ongoing, with occasional setbacks when stress or triggers become overwhelming. I still find myself scanning crowds, checking locks, planning escape routes, but we're no longer defined by fear. Last month, Lynn received her acceptance letter to a master's program in social work. As she shared the news, her smile, bright and genuine, reminded me of the beaming child she once was. I'm proud of you, I told her, my heart full. So proud of who you've become. She hugged me tight. This daughter I almost lost. This woman who fought her way back from hell. We made it, Mom, she whispered against my shoulder. Against everything, we made it. And in that moment, I knew it was true. We had watched Lynn's life go down the drain, but we had also witnessed her remarkable rise from those depths. Together, we had reclaimed what Victor and his world had tried to steal. Our future, our hope, our capacity to love. We had transformed our pain into purpose. And in doing so, we had found our way home.